In the middle of Michigan, the state famous for inventing America's car culture, home to Ford, General Motors, and Chrysler, there's a small island where cars have been completely illegal for over 125 years, and the law shows absolutely no sign of changing anytime soon. Welcome to Mackinac Island, a 3.5 square mile island sitting in Lake Huron, between Michigan's upper and lower peninsulas. It's home to about 600 year-round residents, roughly the same number of horses working there each summer, and exactly 0 legally allowed cars. The story starts in 1898. Automobiles were brand new, loud, and unpredictable, and when an early, horseless carriage backfired on the island, it spooked the horses that residents depended on for transportation and their livelihoods. The village council didn't hesitate. They banned motorized vehicles outright, and 2 years later, extended that ban to cover the entire island, not just the village itself. Not everyone accepted it quietly. In 1900, a summer visitor named Earl C. Anthony decided the rule didn't apply to him and brought a steam-powered car onto the island anyway. It went about as badly as you'd expect. The car startled several horses, caused injuries, and wrecked carriages in the state park. That single incident sealed the island's fate. By 1901, Mackinac Island State Park had adopted the same ban, closing the last obvious loophole and cementing the island's future as a completely motor-free place. Here's the part that surprises most people. This isn't some outdated rule nobody enforces anymore. It's a real, currently active law today, in 2026, well over a century after it was first written. Mackinac Island is still home to the only state highway in the entire United States where you are legally not allowed to drive a car. That road, M185, circles the island's shoreline, and it was never built wide enough for vehicles in the first place. At just 12 feet across, roughly the width of a single traffic lane. So how does an island with no cars actually function day to day? Almost entirely on horsepower and pedal power. Horse-drawn carriages handle everything from taxi service to freight deliveries. Bicycles are everywhere. Even the local mail carrier and delivery services make their rounds by carriage or bike instead of by truck. In summer, when tourism peaks, the island brings in around 500 to 600 working horses just to keep everything moving. There are narrow exceptions, as there are with almost every law like this. Emergency vehicles, specifically a fire truck, an ambulance, and limited police vehicles, are allowed for safety reasons. Over the decades, there have been a small handful of high-profile exceptions too. A hidden emergency vehicle during a presidential visit in 1975, a police-escorted motorcade for a vice presidential visit in 2019, and even one minor vehicle incident in 2005 involving the island's own fire truck and ambulance. But for every resident, business, and the roughly 1.2 million tourists who visit each year, the rule holds firm: no personal vehicles, no exceptions. What's fascinating is how this restriction, born entirely out of a horse safety complaint in the 1890s, ended up becoming the island's single biggest selling point. Rather than treating the car ban as an inconvenience, Mackinac Island leaned into it entirely. Today, it markets itself explicitly around the experience of stepping back in time, cobblestone quiet streets, the rhythmic clip-clop of carriage horses instead of engine noise, and a slower pace of life that draws over 1 million visitors annually specifically because there are no cars to disrupt it. Visitors arrive by a short ferry ride from the mainland, and from the moment they step off the boat, cars simply aren't part of the equation, not as a novelty act, but as the island's actual, everyday infrastructure. The businesses on the island have built entire operations around this reality. Local shops famous for their fudge, hotels, restaurants, and even the island's own historic fort all rely on carriage tours and bicycle rentals as core parts of daily commerce, not just tourist gimmicks. Some families on the island have run horse and carriage businesses for multiple generations, passing down not just the trade, but the responsibility of keeping this unusual legal tradition alive and functional. It's worth noting Mackinac Island wasn't alone in this kind of resistance. Just a decade later, in 1908, an entire Canadian province, Prince Edward Island, banned automobiles province-wide, driven by similar concerns: frightened horses, damaged roads, and residents who saw cars as a disruptive luxury for the wealthy. That broader ban didn't last. It was fully lifted by 1919 as public opinion shifted, though resistance to automobiles reportedly lingered there for years afterward. But Mackinac Island's ban never went through that same reversal. It simply never stopped. So why did one small island succeed in keeping cars out permanently when a whole province eventually gave in? Part of the answer is economics, and part of it is simple momentum. Once tourism took hold around the island's unique charm, the absence of cars stopped being a limitation and became the entire brand. Removing the ban today wouldn't just change a traffic rule, it would fundamentally alter the identity, the workforce, and the entire seasonal economy that 600 residents and hundreds of horses now depend on every single year. Local officials have openly said the ban isn't just tolerated, it's actively protected and celebrated, with the island even holding an annual celebration marking the anniversary of the original 1898 decision. It's also worth pointing out just how deliberately this law has been maintained, not just left alone by accident. Mackinac Island's own historic parks organization has documented the ban's full history for well over a century and periodically celebrates milestone anniversaries of the original decision, treating it less like an old dusty regulation and more like a founding piece of the island's identity. Attempts to challenge it, like Earl C. Anthony's steam car in 1900, haven't succeeded in over 100 years, and there's no serious modern movement to change that. This story is a reminder that not every law needs a dramatic court battle or a modern crisis to explain why it still exists. Sometimes a law survives simply because, over 100 years later, absolutely nobody wants it to change. A rule written to protect a handful of nervous horses in 1898 quietly turned into one of the most distinctive, protected legal quirks in the entire United States, one that residents now defend just as fiercely as the original village council did. So the next time you're stuck in traffic somewhere in Michigan, the actual car capital of America, remember, there's one small island just off its coast where, by law, none of that traffic could ever exist in the first place. 600 people, a few hundred horses, and a highway where the law itself makes sure the loudest sound you'll ever hear is hooves on pavement. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe to Legal Loopholes for more real laws and legal quirks from around the world.